Hello, friends, and welcome back to another round of stories about entitled people. This story starts with a clever shortcut, literally. A guy builds his own garbage cart to save time every week, but when his cranky neighbor sees it, he doesn't ask how, he just demands one for himself. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. All right, let's get into it. The DIY cart that broke a neighbor's brain. I've had more than a few run-ins with this guy, but the garbage cart episode is the one that still makes me laugh. I'll admit it, I'm lazy. Not won't do anything lazy, more like figure out a shortcut lazy. If I have to do the same task every week, I'll tinker until I can do it faster or easier. Hauling heavy garbage cans down our long driveway to the street was one of those chores that kept annoying me, so I built my own cart. None of the store-bought cheap ones looked sturdy enough. They all had cheap wheels or flimsy plastic frames. I used some leftover angle iron, a few pieces of scrap lumber, and a pair of never-flat tires. Those tires cost more up front, but they're worth every penny. No pumping, no cracking. A Saturday afternoon of welding and bolting later, I had a solid 2-can hauler that rolled like a dream. Fast forward to the next garbage day, I'd set the cart out by the curb, proud of my handiwork, when my least favorite neighbor wandered over. We've lived here for more than a decade, and I could count our previous conversations on one hand. The guy's the definition of that neighbor. Always watching, always muttering, never actually helpful. He stops by the curb, squints at the cart, and goes, "Where'd you buy that?" "I didn't," I said. "Made it myself." Without missing a beat, he says, not asks, "Make me one." I thought he was joking, so I laughed. He wasn't joking. He stood there waiting for me to agree like I was his personal handyman. I told him it took half a day to build and about $50 in materials. He just shrugged like that was my problem. "So you'll make me one?" "No," I said plainly. He blinked, offended, then started mumbling under his breath about how some people are inconsiderate and selfish. I just smiled, wheeled my cart back toward the garage, and thought, well, that's another story for the book of neighborhood nonsense. But that's his usual pattern. Show up uninvited, act entitled, and then play the victim when told no. Every time people come over to my house, he makes sure to mow right along the property line, revving the mower like it's a power move. He's also the guy who waters his lawn during a downpour and glares at you if a single leaf from your tree blows into his yard. The man's hobby seems to be being a nuisance. Still, every week when I roll my cans out on my homemade cart, I can feel his eyes burning holes in the back of my head. And honestly, that makes the whole project even sweeter. I would have given him the breakdown. $60 an hour labor, minimum 6 hours, plus cost of materials, estimated $75. Deal? You hold out your hand for a handshake. You really got to lay out how much they're asking for when asking for something for free with these types of entitled people, and they have no concept of the actual cost of something like that. A proper handyman would probably charge more. And our second story. Neighbor says my food is selfish, so I made extra. I live in a small apartment complex. Thin walls, shared hallways, and the kind of place where everyone knows when you sneeze. I love it most days, though, because I get to cook. Cooking's my stress relief, my therapy, my little way of traveling the world from my tiny kitchen. And yes, I like spicy food. Not burn your face off spicy, just good flavors. Garlic, chili, cumin, maybe some paprika, the basics. Last week, I was making shakshuka. You know, that North African tomato and egg dish that makes your whole home smell like heaven? I had my music on low, my pan sizzling, and the smell of garlic and cumin filling the air. I was just about to crack the eggs in when I heard an aggressive knock on the door. Standing there was my neighbor from 2 doors down, a woman who's always seemed vaguely irritated by my existence but has never spoken to me directly. Until now. She didn't say hello, she didn't even smile. She just glared at me and said flatly, "Can you not?" I blinked. "Not what?" "Cook that," she snapped, waving her hand toward my kitchen like it had personally offended her. "Whatever it is, it's offensive." I actually laughed, thinking she was joking. "It's eggs and tomatoes," I said. Her face didn't move. She doubled down. My dog has a sensitive nose. He was shaking from the smell. Now, my brain was short-circuiting trying to connect the dots between my pan of simmering tomatoes and her trembling dog. I said slowly, maybe don't keep your windows open? That clearly wasn't the answer she wanted. Her eyes narrowed. Maybe you should stop being selfish. At this point, I was too stunned to even argue. Selfish? For cooking in my own apartment? I could practically hear the Twilight Zone theme in the background. Then she delivered the grand finale. I'm going to talk to the landlord if this happens again. That's when I smiled. Tell him I'll save him a plate, I said, and shut the door. I stood there for a moment afterward, half laughing, half wondering if I was on some kind of hidden camera show. Then I went right back to my pan and finished cooking my shakshuka. Extra garlic and all. The next day, I decided to test a theory. Around the same time, I made the exact same dish again. This time, I cranked the fan and opened my windows just to make sure the smell carried a little further down the hall. The aroma of chili and garlic wafted through the building like an open invitation. And you know what? Silence. No angry knock, no lecture about offensive eggs, and definitely no sign of her trembling dog. Maybe she finally realized that smells are part of apartment living. Or maybe she's just learned to close her windows. Either way, I'm still cooking. And if she ever knocks again, I'll offer her some. Shakshuka fixes bad moods. Unless, apparently, you're allergic to flavor. This story is a wonderful reminder that you can't please everyone, and you shouldn't have to, especially when their displeasure is rooted in their own desire to control normal, everyday life. The world needs more people who respond to nonsense with a smile and an extra clove of garlic. Keep cooking. Keep enjoying your shakshuka. And may your kitchen always be filled with the glorious, unapologetic smells of good food. And our next story. HOA stole our identities and ended up in jail. My cousin Ben is one of those people who worked his way up from nothing. By 40, he'd saved enough to buy a gorgeous house in a brand new neighborhood, one of those manicured communities where every mailbox looks identical and the HOA board thinks they're the local government. For years, he'd tolerated the usual HOA nonsense, nastygrams about his garbage can being visible for 3 minutes past collection time, letters warning him about his grass being 1.5 inches above regulation length, and the occasional friendly reminder that his porch furniture should match the neighborhood's approved color palette. But last November, the HOA's pettiness turned criminal. It started with a few neighbors getting weird mail, pre-approved credit offers, statements from banks they didn't use, and notifications about recently activated accounts. At first, people thought it was just junk mail. Then Ben got a credit card bill for nearly $3,200 from a company he'd never heard of. The statement listed a community maintenance service charge and 3 contractor invoices. Ben stared at it for a full minute before saying out loud, "You've got to be kidding me." He called the bank thinking it was some kind of identity theft. The representative told him the card had been opened in his name using his address, and get this, authorized by the HOA. They said, "What?" Ben asked, voice rising. "Sir," the rep said carefully, "your HOA appears to have applied for the card on your behalf." That's when the neighborhood chat lit up like a Christmas tree. Half the residents were suddenly getting similar statements, some for hundreds, some for thousands. Turns out the HOA had decided that waiting for budget approvals and member votes was too much work, so they'd gone rogue. They applied for credit cards in the names of homeowners across the community, forged signatures, and used those cards to hire contractors for improvement projects. Important things like power washing sidewalks that didn't need cleaning, repainting perfectly good fences, and upgrading outdoor faucets that no one asked to replace. They even had a system. The HOA president, a smug retired accountant named Ruth Ann, would schedule the contractors while making sure the homeowners weren't home. She literally kept notes on who worked during the day and when the houses were empty. Ben caught one of those contractors when he came home early one Friday. A guy in a neon vest was scrubbing his brick walkway with an industrial sprayer. "Hey, who sent you?" Ben demanded. "HOA," the guy said, not looking up. "Work order said you were good with it." Ben called Ruth Ann immediately. "Why are there people on my property charging me for work I didn't approve?" "Oh, Benjamin," she said in that syrupy tone only power-hungry HOA presidents have, "we've been addressing neighborhood issues. You'll thank us later." "With my own credit card?" Technically, she replied, it's a community account. You're just the listed responsible party. That was the moment Ben realized she'd lost her damn mind. Within a week, residents were banding together. Lawyers got involved. One of the board members cracked early, spilled everything. The HOA had created over 50 fraudulent credit accounts, one for nearly every household in the neighborhood. Each board member had been approving invoices and pocketing kickbacks from the contractors they hired. It was a full-blown identity theft ring disguised as community improvement. When the authorities raided the HOA office, which was really just Ruth Ann's converted dining room, they found folders of personal information, fake signatures, and spreadsheets tracking authorized charges. Ruth Ann tried to claim it was a misunderstanding. The police didn't buy it. By January, 3 of the board members, including Ruth Ann, were indicted on charges of fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. 2 others took plea deals and testified against her. The judge didn't go easy. Apparently pretending to run a neighborhood cleanup initiative while committing financial crimes doesn't play well in court. Ben and the other homeowners got their accounts cleared, but the credit mess took months to untangle. The HOA was dissolved, the houses voted themselves independent, and Ruth Ann's once immaculate home now sits empty with foreclosure notices stapled to the door. She wanted to clean up the neighborhood. She just didn't expect to do it with a criminal record. Criminal indictments, plea deals, and a dissolved HOA are the only appropriate response to such a systemic violation. Ruth Ann's foreclosure is the final ironic twist. The woman who was so obsessed with the neighborhood's appearance ultimately lost her own home, leaving it as a blight on the very community she claimed to be improving. And our last story. My coworker was a jerk, so my friend and I became his personal IT gremlins. Back at my old job, there was this one guy, let's call him Steve, who could have had a PhD in being a jerk. Every workplace has one, but Steve was a special breed, loud, arrogant, and completely convinced the sun rose and set for his convenience. He'd breeze into the office like he was the boss, bark orders at everyone, then vanish the second anyone needed help from him. He wasn't my direct supervisor, thank God, but I worked in IT, specifically as a telephony and VoIP engineer, so eventually everyone came knocking at my door, and Steve was one of those people who demanded instant service. If his phone glitched, it was the end of the world. If yours did, he couldn't care less. One quiet Tuesday afternoon, I was minding my own business, happily tuning some scripts in my cube when I heard shouting. It was Steve. Of course it was Steve. He was leaning over my coworker's desk, red in the face, waving his company's cell phone like it had personally insulted him. My coworker, Sarah, was this soft-spoken, kind person. She was great at her job, but hated conflict. She kept trying to explain the situation calmly, but Steve wasn't listening. He started berating her, loudly, in front of the entire floor. How hard is it to fix a simple phone issue? I shouldn't have to wait all morning. People were staring. Some looked uncomfortable, others just stared at their screens, pretending not to hear. Sarah's hands were literally shaking. She apologized, even though she'd done nothing wrong. By the time he stormed off, she was on the verge of tears. That was the moment I decided Steve was going to learn what real frustration felt like. For anyone unfamiliar with business phone systems, there's this little red light on your desk phone called an MWI, Message Waiting Indicator. It turns on when you have voicemail and off when you've listened. Behind the scenes, it works by the system dialing a hidden internal code to switch the light. Well, I knew those codes. A few days later, when things had settled down, I sent a quick remote command to Steve's phone, turn MW light on. Instantly, that little red LED started glowing like Rudolph's nose. The next morning, the help desk ticket landed in my queue. Voicemail light on, but no messages. Please fix ASAP. I ignored it. By lunchtime, a follow-up came through, then another. Finally, I quietly walked by his desk while he was in a meeting, dialed the off code, and cleared it. He came by later, bragging about how persistent he'd been to get it fixed. See, you just have to stay on top of IT, he said with that smug grin. Sure, Steve, whatever you say. Over the next few months, that little red light became my favorite stress relief button. Every time I was bored, irritated, or just needed a laugh, click, the light went on. Sometimes I'd leave it that way for a few days, sometimes just long enough for him to file a ticket, then I'd clear it before anyone else looked. Then my buddy Dave from the networking team got in on the fun. "You keep messing with his phone, I'll mess with his Wi-Fi," he said, and he did. Random disconnects, dropped calls, tiny delays during video meetings. It was a symphony of minor inconveniences. Steve would stomp through the office muttering about garbage infrastructure and lazy IT staff. We'd nod solemnly and promise to look into it. He started leaving early some days, convinced the building had bad wiring. I can't tell you how many times I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. Eventually, Steve got really paranoid. Every time something glitched, he'd look around suspiciously, like the printers and routers were plotting against him. And in a way, they were. After about 3 months of this, he finally cornered me by the coffee machine. He had dark circles under his eyes and looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "I know it's you," he said quietly. "You're doing this to me. The messages, the Wi-Fi, all of it. Just stop, okay?" I didn't deny it. I just looked at him, calm as could be, and said, "You know, I have a feeling that if you apologize to Sarah for the way you treated her, all this weird tech stuff might just stop happening." His face went slack. He didn't even try to argue. He just nodded slowly and walked away. Later that afternoon, Sarah came by my desk looking confused. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Steve just apologized to me. Like, really apologized. Said he was out of line, that he's been stressed, and that he's working on being more patient." I grinned. "Wow," I said, pretending to be impressed. "Guess miracles really do happen." After that, the technical issues stopped. His phone worked perfectly, the Wi-Fi never dropped again, and Steve, while still kind of a jerk, toned it down a lot. No more public meltdowns, no more screaming at people. Sometimes karma doesn't need years to show up. Just a bored engineer with access to the phone system and a good memory. Steve thought he was alpha. Turns out the office network disagreed. By the end, Steve's standing at the coffee machine like he's seen The Matrix. One apology later, peace restored. Moral: never pick a fight with the people who know your IP address. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.